All right. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. It's great to be here again. I know that the new year has come upon us and looking forward to what we have ahead of us and excited, very excited about the opportunity to bring together the Sparkplug Working Group to really give us a better raise our light level of what is happening within the MQTT space. So, Jeff, how you doing? You're still muted, so I will go to start introductions.
Oh, you're okay. Hey, I just wanted to make sure everything was going live on our LinkedIn. You know, technology, you do your best and then you just hope it works. Good news is we are live on LinkedIn. We've already got 20 and climbing people joined. So thank you for those that have joined. And quick order, Alan. It's important today, before you introduce everybody, I want our audience to know this is your opportunity to ask questions. So we're gonna talk a lot about what Sparkplug is, the origin, where it's headed, all the things. But we're also going to leave plenty of room for your questions to get asked and hopefully answered today.
All right, with that, let's start introducing everyone, and let's get the thing rolling. So we're going to start with the Eclipse Foundation. So Frederick.
Yes, I'm Frédéric Devier. I manage IoT and edge computing programs at the Eclipse Foundation, and it's my pleasure to be the staff member dedicated to help the Sparkplug community grow and thrive in the open source ecosystem.
Benson.
Hi, my name is Benson Hoagland, responsible for product strategy here at Opta22, and we are a member of the Sparkplug Working Group, and I've been working with Sparkplug for 3-4 years, something like that.
My friend Arlen Nipper.
Hello, everybody. Arlen Nipper. I am the CTO with CirrusLink Solutions. I think this is 46 years that I've been doing automation in one form or another. I always like to carve it up in the the 1980s, the 90s, the 2000s, and now 2010 onwards. So it's been very interesting. I was one of the co-inventors of MQTT with Andy Stanford Clark, 1999 with Phillips 66. It's been very interesting, as you can imagine, for me to see the adoption of MQTT from everything from home automation. I got these Shelly devices that natively talk MQTT, turn your lights on and off. It's great. All the way to complete pipeline control systems. We started kind of this whole Sparkplug thing as CirrusLink for kind of our own sanity, and it grew out of that, and that's one of the things we'll be discussing today. So very interested. Alan, Jeff, everybody, this is going to be a great discussion.
The person I hope to be when I grow up, Todd.
Todd Anslinger, IoT and automation specialist at Chevron in the Chevron Technology Center Asset Performance Hub.
And the person I like to bowl like, Travis Cox.
Hey everybody, I'm Travis Cox. I'm the Chief Technology Evangelist for Inductive Automation. Really happy to be here. We're really inductive automation. We're really excited about the Sparkplug specification, and that it just answers the question about interoperability and integration within the Ignition ecosystem. So we'd love to see more of it and can't wait for the discussion.
I'm Alan Ray. I am a co-founder of Integrate Live with Jeff Nipper, and excited to really be here around the Sparkplug B working group and enjoy. I'm going to enjoy this conversation probably as much as the audience will.
And my name is Jeff Nipper, not to be confused with Jeff Nipper. That's Arlen's cousin. And, in fact, the first time Arlen and I met, I told him that we had to be related somewhere down the line. Always glad to be here, and looking forward to just working through today, getting a lot of questions, but also making sure that everybody that's watching and seeing this knows that next Wednesday is the Plug Fest, and we'll talk more about that. But if you haven't already, please take this moment, go to integratelive.com, look at the events section, and register for the Plug Fest next week. Hey, let's talk about just kind of a loose agenda we want to work through today. we want to carve out the first 10 or 15 minutes and provide just a little bit of history. Now, we don't need to go too deep into MQTT. I think most of our audience is aware. Arlen, you've already touched a little bit on the fact that in the late 90s, you and Andy with IBM co-invented MQTT, and I believe that was a Phillips 66 project. We're gonna move through that. We're gonna talk about why Sparkplug, why Eclipse, and then we're gonna move out of there and talk a little bit more about how the Sparkplug spec will mature and evolve over time, touching on the TCK, make sure everybody understands that, and then hit some other questions before we do some previews of the Plug Fest for next week. Sound good?
Yep.
Okay. Well, hey, Arlen, start us off if you would. Give us that Reader's Digest condensed version. What, why MQTT to start with? How did it come about, and how did it get used in the beginning through today?
Okay, thanks, Jeff. So at the time, I was with Arcom Control Systems. Arcom Control Systems through the 80s and 90s manufactured protocol converters. And if you can imagine, remember the joke on RS-232, what does that stand for? Well, it takes 2 engineers 3 days to actually make it work. That was our world. So we had all of these proprietary protocols out there in the field, and we were manufacturing boxes that would convert protocol A to B, B to C, C back to A, so on and so forth. And we had a very large presence in the oil and gas market. And so one of the things that happened, if you guys can remember, in the mid-90s, a really bad thing happened, is that AT&T got deregulated. And if you would have been around in the mid-80s and you were doing SCADA, telemetry, any sort of remote communications, you went to AT&T and you got 4 dedicated pairs of wires, if you will, out to all your field devices, and you use modems, either Bell 202 or FSK type modems, to communicate. Well, as AT&T got deregulated, the VSAT industry came in, and they started providing VSAT communications. Now, that was Gilat, GE SpaceNet, Scientific Atlanta, AT&T tried them. And the good news is now we had connectivity. The bad news, every VSAT vendor had their own proprietary transport to get the data from the remote site into the hub, back into your SCADA central system. So finally, for Phillips 66, AT&T came out with a VSAT system that leveraged a new thing at the time called TCP/IP. Now remember, if you were around in the 90s, it was DECnet. DECnet was the predominant networking technology that people were using. So really, TCP/IP was new. And so Steve Koenig was the manager at Phillips 66, and he realized that polling over TCP/IP for the Phillips 66 SCADA system was slow and it was expensive. He said, Arlen, there's got to be a better way to leverage TCP/IP kind of natively, if you will. And he was working at the time with Phillips 66 IT, and they were using this new technology from IBM called message-oriented middleware. And with message-oriented middleware, you would publish information, and then another application would subscribe to that. And what they figured out was it was decoupling IT applications. In other words, you could write an application that would just publish information, and you didn't care who consumed it. And you could have another application that would subscribe to information, but didn't care where it came from. So you were decoupling IT applications. So what if we could do the same thing on a pipeline with a PLC or a flow computer, take that information and just publish it? And then the subscriber to that could be applications like your SCADA system, leak detection, inventory systems, things like that. So that's literally where Andy was with IBM, and they were using IBM MQ series. We took the huge overhead that they had in that. We smashed it down. We added things like the Last Will and Testament, and that's where the genesis of MQTT came from. It literally, we had no idea where it would go. We were just trying to solve a problem for Phillips 66. And we were able to take their data acquisition time from minutes to less than 10 seconds for all of the booster stations, which that was the goal of the project.
And so
Now, I'll mention here, even though Andy and I did the original spec in about 6 months, I think the reason that we're all on this call is that Andy and I were very adamant that MQTT be open. And if you can imagine IBM in the late 90s and doing something that was open, so it was probably 12 to 18 months wrestling with the IBM lawyers to actually keep MQTT as an open specification.
And when did you, outside of the Phillips 66 application, when did you start to see MQTT really start to get picked up, not just inside of automation, but just in general?
Well, I mean, there was a very long period there, probably 7, 8, 9 years, where all MQTT technology was pretty much owned by IBM. I mean, they had the brokers, they had the infrastructure. So we won some very large projects, but as you can imagine, it came with all of the IBM baggage that came with it. So I think there was probably a couple of inflection points. One is that MQTT was chosen for the railroad anti-collision networking protocol, but since it didn't belong in a standard, they chose AMQP over MQTT. Well, that kind of pissed Andy and I off to the point where we got to go get this thing standardized. So that was where we took it to the OASIS standards body, number one. And number two is we started the PAHO project in the Eclipse Foundation. So now it started kind of getting out to, you know, people that could download it and try it. And Mosquito was a huge part of that. That was an open source broker that followed the RSMB, the really small message broker that IBM had put out there originally. So we started getting traction there. And then the blog posts from Facebook, where the Facebook team had done Facebook Messenger, and it was a disaster. You would put it on your phone, it would eat the battery out of your phone. It was slow, it was unreliable. And so Facebook kind of went to the team and said, look, you guys got to clean this up, and you've got like 2 months to do it. And they wrote a blog post about finding the MQTT spec and then implementing it, and all of the things, the decoupling, the efficiency, the last will and testament, everything that we kind of did for Phillips 66, Facebook took advantage of when they did Facebook Messenger. Now, all of a sudden, when people said, well, how many people are using MQTT? Well, we could say 800 million people, because that's how many people were using it on Facebook. And then, you know, now we're talking about cloud, and there was this notion of the Internet of Things. And that's where the adoption really started taking off, albeit everybody was, you know, we'll talk about this, but the good thing about MQTT is it's simple and you can publish anything you want on any topic. The bad thing about MQTT is you can publish anything you want on any topic.
So is this then the birth of Sparkplug?
Yes. Well, so then as we evolved the Cirrus Link, we found this really cool company that had a platform. They were called Inductive Automation. The first project that we did with Philips was actually on what was ultimately a Schneider product. It was Oasis DNA. And we were doing and executing a project for Plains Midstream in Calgary. And we just didn't have the visibility. We had no tools. And we found this company called Inductive that had a platform. And I went out, met with Travis for a couple of days. He said, well, Arlen, you know, you could do this and this. And what we came out with was MQTT engine module. And what MQTT engine did for us originally is it gave us a tool at Plains Midstream that we could plug into the brokers, and we could see all of the traffic coming from all their field devices into the Oasis DNA system. And that was great. We now had, that was the first MQTT module for Ignition.
What
But
year was
then
that?
we started, say that again?
What year was that?
That was 2016.
And so Sparkplug B was not on the radar at this time.
Nope. It was the proprietary, not proprietary. It was the undocumented binary message payload that John Lujan and myself had come up with for Phillips 66. So, boy, it was efficient, but it was cryptic, you know. And then we started going to shows with this MQTT module. It only talked to Alexis directors. And we started meeting OEMs. We met Benson, Opto22, Hilscher, Moxa, Advantech, and everybody were saying, oh, we do MQTT. Well, we do MQTT. But there was no interoperability because everybody did it different. So for our own sanity, again, we weren't looking to take over the world, just within CirrusLink, we all got together, Wes, all my developers, we've all been using MQTT at the time for 20 years. And we said, let's take all the lessons learned at Philips and all these other companies, and let's make something with all those lessons learned to say, if we were able to create an MQTT standard, what would we do? And that was Sparkplug A. And then quickly, we got a lot of feedback from the user community, from all of the inductive automation customers. So we went to Sparkplug B to kind of really give us that depth of capability that we needed in being flexible. And we started putting that out. Again, it was on our GitHub site. It wasn't anything to do with Eclipse Foundation. And then that's where customers like Chevron, like Todd and others are going, okay, CirrusLink, who owns Sparkplug? And we said, well, hey, it's on our open, you can download it. We have it on our public GitHub. And they go, no, really. I mean, come on. No, where are you going to put this? And that's where we had to make the decision at that point in time, Jeff, is, where do you take it? Do you take it to the ISA? Do you take it to IEEE? It's not an RS-232 connector. It's software. And so we had the experience already with the success that we had with the PAHO project. So that's when we started the Tahoe project. And we literally, at that point in time, CirrusLink donated all the IP, everything, the spec, all of the reference implementation code was given to the Eclipse Software Foundation. And so they own it. My point there is that software is eating the world. The Eclipse Foundation already had the infrastructure, the GitHub, the make facilities, the tools. They were already doing specifications like Java EE. And so it was the perfect place to take something that was software centric and move that to an organization whose job it is to take care of open source software.
And, at the end of the day, from the vendor perspective, right, Benson, Travis, we're here to serve Todd, right? Or all of the men and women that represent the different end users and the integrators that from the vendor side is so important for us to meet their expectations. So I am curious, Todd, from your side and from the Chevron side, it's obviously, it's stating the obvious, but just speak to why it's so important that the Sparkplug specification be open and be maintained by an organization like Eclipse.
Okay, I'm going to give you why an end user should use Sparkplug. I'm going to give you a 3-minute rundown. See what I did there? I'm going to go a little bit farther outside of why Eclipse, but because I'm going to get some practical pieces too. So number one, I did the time measurements. It cuts the systems integration time down to 20% versus a pull response system. As long as you're using cookie cutter type graphics and you're doing things like wells, we have thousands of wells, show them up in a dashboard type graphic, 20% of your integration time. Number two, since we're on percentages, using Sparkplug, it uses only 15% of the bandwidth of are upstream radios than versus a pull response. So, which that's just the nature of publisher subscriber itself. So what that means to us is if we have some slower Ethernet radios, if we want to add Ethernet traffic like cameras, let's say, we don't have to upgrade our radio system. We just reduce our bandwidth with Sparkplug with a publisher subscriber, and we don't need to upgrade our radios. Saves us thousands and millions of dollars. Number 3, Sparkplug has burst certificate and death certificate, which means they have session awareness. So when you're connecting to critical locations where you could have a spill or some sort of environmental release, you need to have those alarms and notifications. This will tell you you're not communicating to a location so that you're not running blind, and keeps you out of trouble and keeps you out of the public spotlight. Number 4, it accounts for our hierarchy of our facilities, in the topic in the tag namespace. So instead of having to add that context into the JSON script, which requires a JSON coder, it can be all right there in the tag name. Great, easy to search for. Number 5, it's given to the Eclipse Foundation to manage the open standard. If you think about it from a vendor standpoint, if I went to ask Rockwell or Emerson or GE, hey, will you use Chevron's flavor of MQTT? They're going to say no, because that only increases their sales to Chevron. Having it be an open standard, that allows everyone to use it, all the vendors to use it, and more likely to adopt it. And another thing is giving it to Eclipse Foundation. If we had a Chevron flavor of MQTT, I'd be paying someone a salary to maintain that. I don't have to do that now. And that's, plus when that person leaves, then that functionality would likely leave with him. So him or her. Number 6, vendors have Sparkplug compliant PLCs right now. So the adoption in the industry is already happening. It's easy to find someone, well, it's not that easy, but you can find someone that has Sparkplug compliant PLCs, which leads me to my last one. And this is really what it comes down to for us is your data just shows up when you instantiate an object at the lowest point. So if you think about it, I want to add a tank object at the PLC level. If a broker, my touchscreen, my HMI graphics, my historian all subscribe to that. It all just shows up. You take out the human error and you're modernizing your infrastructure at the same time. So that's from end user standpoint, why use Sparkplug.
Thanks, Todd. Question came in while you were rolling through. And let me just real quick, just put a caveat in here. Alan, Todd, I think a lot, Arlen, oil and gas is where you've lived a lot, if not almost all of your careers, right? Yeah. We have to recognize, and I'm just saying this to our audience, we recognize that for many of the audience, for many of the people interested, you might be looking at this use case saying, yeah, but this is not me. Bear with us. We want to come back in and talk about that. Okay. So don't tune out just because you're hearing wells and remote devices. We're going to talk to the four wall factory folks also. Question came in. Adrian had a question. Sparkplug B requires to send all metrics during end-earth debirth message. Isn't this actually causing problems if I'm using unreliable communication, meaning every time the connection breaks, I'm sending all of that data over again?
Yes and no. I mean, again, to Todd's point, we've done the measurements, even with birth and death certificates happening very, very often. Your overall bandwidth is so reduced over an MQTT infrastructure. So the overhead of publishing a birth, but if I'm in a mission critical pipeline control system, and my system comes online, I need to know exactly where everything is at that point in time. I've got to have that information. I can't leave a valve status behind, right? And then that comes trickling in later, and all of a sudden the operator thinks the valve was going in transit when actually it was already closed, right? Yeah. So you have to remember, because we are going to talk about the four walls in the factory and the fact that this information is going to the cloud. And that's a good point. I don't have to worry about mission critical control if I'm going to the cloud just into an S3 bucket or into a data lake. But our point was, and it always has been, one of the mantras is with MQTT Sparkplug, decouple, provide a single source of truth. But the third tenet was be able to prove you have a better, faster, more secure, more reliable operational system first and foremost. So if I can do a mission critical control system and convince Todd that we've taken care of all of the things that you need to do to be able to control that in real time, then that is the goal of Sparkplug. We can have discussions around, oh, well, maybe we don't need to send the full berth in this particular use case. And that's something that can be discussed later with the evolution of the Sparkplug spec.
Thanks, Rob.
I'd like to, there's a question came in. It came in for Todd, but I'd like to just give my 2 cents on it before Todd answers it.
Yeah, read it now.
The question is, how important is having programs such as Sparkplug compatibility program for organizations like Chevron? Ideally, having software and hardware vendors being Sparkplug compatible. So we got, we did a long Ignition 7-year program where we placed a different HMI with Ignition, and in the process of wanting to leverage Sparkplug B, we started to talk to different vendors who we wanted to use or we were using to say, hey, we're going to be transitioning to a decoupled infrastructure and architecture that's going to allow us to do pub sub. We've chosen Sparkplug as that means to do that. And we brought in multiple companies, vendors to come in and that we were currently using. And it was a struggle. This was, Arlen, what year was that when we brought you in to help us with the Canary Sparkplug stuff? That was 2018, 2007?
Yeah, 18, 19.
And it was a lift to help companies get compatible. And so that's why I'm super excited about the advancement with the working group and with the TCK and with the tools that are being developed. But ultimately, the benefit of it has been outstanding for a company like Era, where we transitioned our entire historian to a pub sub model using Sparkplug B, and we went from having really 5 full-time employees down to 2 because of simplicity, and the maintenance of that system became so simple that we were able to really reassign resources to do other things that were more beneficial.
Yeah, and I echo that. It's really about resource utilization. If we didn't have that compliance piece and the validation piece from Eclipse, then we would have to pay someone to do that. And either you're paying a contractor to do that, or you're paying an employee to do that. And that's not going to be their sole function, right? It's going to be part of what they do. So it goes on their list, and then they might get to it 3 months from now. Having it ready to go and it's compliant and validated and ready to use is huge for a large corporation.
Let's move just a bit. I'd like to talk a little bit about what is Eclipse's role, particularly around the working group. Like Frederick, what is the working group? What is this group of gentlemen in regards to the working group? What's the inner workings of this for those that aren't familiar with how Eclipse functions?
Yeah, of course, Jeff. So one thing to remember about the Eclipse Foundation is that we are a vendor-neutral, nonprofit organization completely dedicated to open source projects and open standards. Okay, so our only reason to exist is to manage things like that on the behalf of the community. So when Alan said, we gave all of those things, the IP around Sparkplug and all of that to Eclipse, it's literally that. We are the owners on the behalf of the community of the IP, the logos, the trademarks, everything. And so this means we can maintain a level playing field among all contributors to our open source projects and our open specifications. So now at Eclipse, we have a way we work where essentially we have projects and we have working groups. Projects are literally that, there's a project lead, there are committers and contributors, and they work together on something, whether it's the Eclipse Tahoe implementation for Sparkplug or the specification itself. Those are two distinct projects with their communities, and they make the decisions for themselves. As a staff member, I'm there to accompany them, ensure that they follow our open development process and all of that. But ultimately, it's up to them to decide. And I can advise. I have opinions like everyone, but I'm only a single voice in all of that. And then we have this concept of working groups. And working groups are there to forge together a common vision and promote it in the market. So the working group is the place where organizations like Opto, CirrusLink, Inductive, all the people that really care about a specific technology or a specific market, and they come together and they make decisions about overall the vision, the strategy, and where we are headed as a community. And once again, my role in that is to play this vendor neutral facilitator to ensure that everyone is treated in the same way, and that we have a public roadmap, that we have, essentially an approach where we collectively, build something together. Essentially, that's what we do.
Can I say it back to you and correct me if I misspeak? Okay. There's two parts at play here. There's the working group, and the working group are typically vendors or end users that are willing to put money in to help promote, in this case, Sparkplug, to help it get into the marketplace, marketing, advertising, some guidance. And that's one side of it. On the other side is the actual project. And these are the men and the women that are committing and contributing to the actual, in this case, specification of Sparkplug.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And essentially, we are a member-funded organization. So all of the organizations on the call today, they contribute money to us, and we use this money to maintain the infrastructure supporting the projects, and of course, to drive the marketing initiatives in the market that we do on the behalf of the community.
Okay. So just again, for clarity, obviously the Eclipse Foundation has men and women employed, and it's through the contributions of the working group members that are helping keep Eclipse running to do the things that Eclipse does, which we all, I think, understand and respect that has to happen, or who are we going to give the spec to manage? But to be clear, and Benson, I'm going to pick on you because I think anybody that knows you knows how above the board you are. Opto 22 being a member of the working group and Benson sitting on the steering committee does not give Benson or Opto any preference on where the Sparkplug spec moves from a evolutionary standpoint, correct?
Yeah, that is correct. And, obviously we have an Opto 22 employee that's on the committer side, an engineer that's developing the spec and helping move that forward. But my role on the working group is to, coalesce these like-minded individuals and vendors and customers to rally around this notion of what we can do here, standardize that, and further that adoption. There's so many benefits to our customers today, and Travis will have his own set of stories. But for our customers, this is a watershed moment. This is an opportunity for people to do things that wasn't possible before. And I come from Opto 22 was one of the founders of OPC back in 1996. So this isn't our first rodeo. And to that end, we realized even in 96 when we came out with OPC, we had to come up with something that we could start with, that we could get others in the community, vendors, customers, and so on, all to pitch in to move that forward. And look at OPC today. That was arguably a success. And this is not an OPC versus MQTT discussion, because that shouldn't be a discussion. They both have their place in any given environment. My point is that by companies like Opto, like Canary, Inductive Automation, CirrusLink, all of us getting together, we get a lot of feedback from different domain experts, different subject matter experts as well, to try to coalesce and bring something forward that's going to be the future of communications and industrial.
Thanks, Vincent. So this week, in the last 2 weeks, in promoting just this conversation and next week's PlugFest, there's been a lot of conversation just inside of different comment threads. I saw Walker a couple weeks ago. He did a video on somebody's like, hey, here's the 10 things missing from the Sparkplug spec. And there's great points brought up in those threads. There was great points brought up of things that, particularly, I'm going to just say, the four-walled factory guys and gals are looking for out of the spec. Before we start talking about where it's going, can we get some clarification of when someone says, hey, I get it, dispersed systems, it's useful for you right now. But for me, I really wanted to do this, and that. How do they bring those ideas forward? And how are those ideas then evaluated?
Well, there are various layers involved there. At a minimum, coming forth on our Slack workspace or mailing list and exchange, viewpoints with the current committers, the current contributors to the spec and to the Tahoe implementation is a good first step, right? Start a conversation somewhere. And then, anyone can contribute more specific ideas by opening issues on GitHub, because the specification document is in a GitHub repository that anyone can access. It's a public one. So you can create issues there to have a more structured and targeted conversation proposing specific ideas. However, we only accept detailed design ideas or contributions from our members because of IP things. But if you have a general comment about, hey, let's make Sparkplug be better for manufacturing in this way, then of course we can have open conversations about that, no problem there. And then the next step is to get involved. Anyone signing our contributor agreement, can propose changes to the spec. Specifically, you may want to change the text or add the section or things like that. But all of that is ultimately debated by the committers of the Sparkplug specification project. So the way this works is that every working group member has at least one committer, and some of them have several because of past contributions and their own merit. But all of that ultimately is decided by the committers. So if you want to have a vote in deciding what will get in, the key is to become a member, to get at least one committer on the project, and then collectively the project members decide together what they will work on and where they are headed. So in fact, I will start in the next few weeks. The committers regularly meet to discuss the state of the spec project. And so at the next meeting, we will sit together and chart out the process that will ultimately give birth to the roadmap for the next version or versions, plural, of the spec. And we have transparency rules at the Eclipse Foundation, which means that at some point, once it will be mature enough, this roadmap will be shared with the general public, and everyone will be able to express opinions and weigh in on where things are headed. So essentially, this is because projects at Eclipse have to be open, transparent, meritocratic. And by meritocratic mean, to become a committer, you need to demonstrate a history of contributions to a specific project.
And the watershed moment of last year, Jeff, was that, remember, a lion's share of the work that we've done over the last, I think, maybe a year and a half, 2 years, is literally, Cirrus Link had an idea, and Wes and I and the whole team wrote the original Sparkplug spec, and I think I wrote it more like a tutorial than a specification. But at least we had a document out there, and we gave that IP, and we gave some working code. But then the process then is that we had to mature this spec to conform to the specification process that the Eclipse Foundation actually had set forward. So now we took this idea, it matured into the release of the specification, which just happened last year after all of these people went through it, and after we developed the TCK, the Technology Conformance Kit, that went with and is tied intimately to all of the annotations within the spec. So it's interesting to me that the committers actually built, if you will, a way to annotize the spec, and the result of that is a TCK that you run against your implementation, so that when Todd buys your piece of equipment, it's got the Sparkplug logo on it. He knows that that's going to work properly within his infrastructure. So yes, given the genesis, yes, it was oil and gas centric because that's where it came from. Does that mean we are definitely open to any ideas going forward? That's why we have Sparkplug B, because we definitely think there will be a C and a D and an E. And we took account for that in the topic namespace so that I can go to Sparkplug C, still maintain Sparkplug B, and then go to D. And we have that interoperability because we built that in at the very onset.
I see. Tomas asks if there's currently a list of committers, contributors.
So you can find that on the website of the Eclipse Foundation. So there's a specific page where you have the list of current committers for the project. I can fish that out for you, and maybe Jeff, you can paste that in the chat on your side.
Yeah. I think you can comment possibly also.
Seconds, and I will paste that.
Thank you. So again, just for clarity, I'm just repeating it back. Someone needs to go to the Eclipse Git, do a pull, get the specification.
So the specifications PDF is available from the working group's website. There's a handy-dandy option for that in the menu. But of course, you can clone the GitHub repository and create the PDF. If you want to see the absolute latest work done there, you can do that and build it yourself. So to speak, it's a fairly simple process.
Okay. And once they've started to make commitments, then they're going to be involved in the rest of the process, the decision making. They can be involved at that point in helping place votes on what comes in or how things are handled. But this does not involve financial membership in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, you can contribute without being a member.
Yep.
And that's fine. You have to sign the contributor agreement because essentially it establishes a right for the Eclipse Foundation to incorporate third-party contributions, but it doesn't involve even copyright transfers or anything like that. This is just the contributor given a license to the foundation to merge that with the rest of the text or the rest of the code in the case of code projects. And ultimately, someone, let's say, if I'm an individual really passionate about Sparkplug, I start pushing patches on the code or pushing changes to the text and improvements and opening issues. At some point, Wes Johnson, who is the project lead, and the other committers on the project will feel that I'm a valuable contributor. And then I can be, as an individual, elected as a committer on the project, not necessarily representing any organization, but just me as an individual. Of course, if you care about this technology, you should become a member because there are advantages to that, but there's no requirement to do so. And the same about implementation. Sparkplug is an open specification, so anyone can implement it in any form, and redistribute the spec document just by giving attribution to the Eclipse Foundation, and that's all. So it's really open, and this means that we were able even to propose it as an international standard for standardization.
Yeah. I just want to make sure we eliminate that pay-to-play idea, because and I get why that idea exists, because so many things in our world are pay to play, right? Like unless you throw a $20,000 check, you don't get a voice. This is not that. And
yeah. The one thing that requires membership is something we talked about earlier in the broadcast, which is the compatibility program. So the compatibility program is essentially the right to use the Sparkplug compatible logo in your marketing materials, on our website, stickers on your devices, whatever. And we do that in that way because essentially we support the Sparkplug ecosystem with those membership fees. And so there is, added value for our members in that. So you can say, you can download the TCK and make a statement that my Sparkplug implementation passes the TCK. That's fine. You can do that without being a member. But if you want the logo, if you want to be featured in the list of compatible products that Todd is browsing all the time on our website,
Right.
then you have to be a member of the foundation. You have to be a member of the working group. So that's the distinction there. But anyone can download the spec, implement it free of charge. You do whatever you want. You can use the TCK to validate for conformance free of charge as well.
Okay. So that makes perfect sense. So we can use the TCK. We can make sure that our products are meeting the standard. But at the end of the day, if I'm going to use the logo and put that logo on my black box, I'm going to have to be a member. Because at the end of the day, I'm financially benefiting as a company putting that logo on my product. Therefore, it's only right. I think someone would have a hard time defending not becoming a member at that point. Travis, what did you want to say?
Yeah, I was going to say that there's a couple of ways, right, to contribute not only to the specification and to the future, the roadmap of where that's going, but also to encourage vendors and to encourage companies where they want to see Sparkplug in their products to become a member and to pass TCK and get that compatible logo, because it is probably the most important thing that's got to happen here, right? This is the adoption of this specification, and we all see it as this is really changing the industry for the better. There's a lot of real benefits, and I think we can talk about the benefits of this as we go forward. But for every company that wants to utilize it, it answers so many questions instantly. Seeing that logo, it just knows the interoperability. It knows that data can be automatically discovered, that it has context, that we can, we know what we're dealing with. And anyways, I just think that we can encourage more of the ecosystem to rally around this, to get adopted. And we can see that, we want to see that list become really large, because for us, I mean, we're a vendor in this ecosystem where we obviously really are all about Sparkplug, but we want to see many others become Sparkplug compatible, because that just means interoperability with us. And no company, end users out there, Todd's looking for the best of all these different products, and he wants to put them together. And in order to really put it together is to have an open standard like this that promotes interoperability. So I just want to make that point. There's a couple of ways that contribution can happen here.
Yeah, and I'm just going to be Mr. Practical here. We're all busy people. I'll use an example. If I'm going to look for a LoRaWAN device, I'm going to start with the LoRaWAN Alliance website. So therefore, if I'm going to look for a Sparkplug device, I'm going to look for the Sparkplug compatible on the Eclipse Foundation website. That's just a practical example of how life is.
Todd, I did it this morning. I'm an Apple HomeKit guy, right? Now I'm getting ready to rewire those that will start to see my office actually stop looking like a black wall and start to see stuff there. I'm going through all of these projects. I didn't go to Amazon and look and see who said that they are Apple Home compatible. I went to Apple HomeKit's website and I looked for the list, because one, I don't trust what they write up on Amazon saying that I'm Apple compatible. No. I want to see from the source, because I know they've done their due diligence.
Exactly.
There was a question that asked, hey, why Sparkplug C? Why not Sparkplug B 2.2 or 2.0, 2.2, 2.4? Why would we change to a C, Arlen? What's your thought?
Well, we built that in. I mean, you can go both ways. And so I do see it changing at the version level. Sparkplug B, we've added some capabilities. But at some point in time, there may be something in the manufacturing space, in the food and pharma space, that says we've got to add a new verb to the topic or something like that. And then that would indicate, kind of moving to Sparkplug C, if you will. So we've got the latitude there at both the minor revision level and then something major that's going to happen in the future that none of us know about yet.
So could we say, Alan, that the letter denotes a bit evolutions in the payload format, and the version number is rather about the behaviors overall of the system? Could we
Correct.
simplify it that way?
Yes.
Alexander had a question. Is there some minimal core functionality which a client has to implement over MQTT spec to benefit from Sparkplug? Can it be, say, device birth publish, or the required list is more broad?
Well, right now, I mean, for the Sparkplug compatibility, you do have to support all of the annotations within the within the client. So we have the notion of a remote client publishing information like a PLC, an RTU, a flow computer, an edge of network device, and then we've got the profile for an application that consumes that, say a SCADA host system, a database system, stuff like that. And so they are going to say that, hey, to be Sparkplug compatible, you've got to at least have the notion of the in-birth, the D-birth, and the D-data messages, and not necessarily the D-command. If your piece of equipment was only publishing information and you never had to send a command to it, then yeah, you could ignore the D-command space, if you will. But for the support of the verbs, the births, the D-data messages, the commands, those need to be implemented in Sparkplug. So when your device drops into an MQTT broker infrastructure, you've got that plug and play capability. In other words, you did your in-birth. Hey, I'm here. I just showed up and I'm from this location. And here's all the things that I know about as a device. And that goes back to this whole notion of a single source of truth.
So Benson and Travis, did you guys run the TCK against your products?
Yes, we did.
Did you pass? Did you have to make changes?
There was some final changes that came out with the release spec that were tickling those bits, if you will. But yeah, we're pretty solid.
You talked about the process of like a vendor that becomes a member, downloads the TCK, and then wants to validate with Eclipse to get the ability to put that logo on their website. What does that process look like?
Yes, so it's fairly straightforward in the sense that you start by downloading the TCK and working on your implementation. You iron out the kinks and all of that. Once this is done, well, if you're not already a member, you join the foundation, you join the working group. So that's just, a few agreements to sign. And you sign an agreement then to get access to the logo as well. So there's a specific trademark agreement for that. But once again, the terms in that are, well, fairly standard, I would say. And once this is done, you go on a specific GitHub repository. All of that is explained on our website. But essentially, we have a repo where we manage the listing requests. So you say you are making a public statement. Hey, my product XYZ passes the TCK. Here is the version of the TCK. Here is where I downloaded it from. Here is the digital signature on it, because we need to ensure that this is, not some random download from over the internet, but the real deal, so to speak, etc. So you provide information about the tests that you've done, including a public link on your web servers to the test report that the TCK gave you when you ran it. Okay, and you have to expose that in some form on your side of things, because this is a public record of your performance. And so once you have documented that in a GitHub issue, one of the committers of the project will have a look at it, review the information and give us the +1 at the foundation. And once we have this +1, then we take the steps to put that product on the website. And it's as simple as that. So essentially, if we boiled that to a few steps, this is about testing and fixing your implementation.
Mm-hmm.
After that, becoming a member, sign the trademark agreement, and ask for your product to be listed. So 4 simple steps.
All right, I've still got at least a half a dozen questions. We're going to go about 20 minutes. So I think we should just do a final call. Hey, if you have questions, hit them now. We're going to start going through the final bunch that we haven't answered, and then tease the plug fest just a bit. Travis, Alan had asked, I wanted to also give you a chance to respond. TCK on your side, already going through it. What was your finding?
Yeah, so we're in the process with CirrusLink. So CirrusLink makes the MQTT modules for Ignition. So they're running through the TCK on their side with that. And what we're going to be doing, though, of course, is jointly listing the Ignition and the CirrusLink modules on the page, right? So that there's no confusion about that in terms of compatibility with Sparkplug. So that is in the works. I imagine, Arlen, this will be fairly soon here.
Yeah,
this will be completed.
Yeah, we passed everything. To Frederick's point, the committee will be meeting and voting on that. I believe HiveMQ has some requests out there. CirrusLink has some requests out there. So you'll probably start seeing those here very shortly.
David Schultz led us off early on with a question over on the LinkedIn side. He'd love to just hear a bit of a conversation around recommended applications for Sparkplug. I think Benson, Travis, you guys have a foot in so many verticals. You'll speak well to this. I find it's great, David says, for SCADA and controls data, but keeps seeing that other protocols tend to be favored or easier to use for transactional data at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Your thoughts, where are you seeing some really good Sparkplug applications currently? Where do you see that you think it could go?
Well, from our end, indeed, we're not an oil and gas company, right? So we build products for all verticals. We've definitely seen a huge adoption in the water and wastewater business. Now, you could probably draw some pretty distinct parallels between remote assets in oil and gas and those in water and wastewater. So that's probably pretty obvious. But those advantages are real for water wastewater as well. We're also doing a lot now with pharma and within manufacturing. And I agree with David. You always want to use the right tool for the job. In terms of transactional data on-prem, OPC is hard to beat. But as soon as I need to start moving that data into any kind of enterprise applications, say somebody's in the middle of their digital transformation journey where they want to democratize data on the plant floor into other systems, as Arlen described earlier. You want to get into asset management systems. You want to get it into laboratory software, or perhaps even on up the chain into ERP, MES, and so on. That's where we see some real benefits. So many of our customers in manufacturing, food and bev, pharma, they're using MQTT for that data democratization perspective, putting things into a unified namespace, allowing other applications to start to consume this data, while on the transactional side, down on the on-prem industrial network, they may still be utilizing, in fact, they are still utilizing technologies such as OPC. So they really work well hand in hand, given the tasks that you need to accomplish. And that's what we're seeing. So we're not seeing it just in water, wastewater, oil and gas. We are seeing it now in pharma, food and bev, and manufacturing. And there's another topic here that hasn't really come up yet. And it's something that's near and dear to my heart. And that is cybersecurity. The thing about the traditional poll response methods is anytime you're pinging a PLC for data, that's an open port. The PLC has to listen for that, right? So I have to have an open way for some application to come and communicate to me as a PLC to get the data out. And then if you bring that up to an OPC level, same thing. The OPC UA server now has to have an open port. So you've got all these open ports everywhere. One of the things that's very cool about MQTT is that pub-sub model and this notion that I'm pushing data out. I don't have to have an open port. I can start to expose and democratize all my data in a very, very secure way. And that's a huge deal, not only for oil and gas or water, wastewater, where you have remotely dispersed assets, but it also has an impact on the plant floor, particularly when we're having to deal with things like the Purdue model and the various levels. We want to be able to move data freely through these applications, but to do so, we have to do it securely. And because MQTT and Sparkplug B use that method of publishing data on an outbound method, and I know we use that term a lot, and a lot of people are, what the heck is outbound? It's simply being able to push data out without necessarily accepting any connections back into the device. So cybersecurity is near and dear to my heart. It's also to a lot of customers today are having to focus on closing down ports on their devices, but still being able to get the data where it needs to be.
And one thing quickly worth mentioning, if some of you watching will be attending the ARC Forum conference a few weeks from now in Orlando, people representing a few of the verticals that Benson mentioned, actual end users will be there to tell you about their actual use of the technology. And of course, this is something that we will work on throughout the year as well to make that a bit more visible. But if you are in a hurry to learn about not just but other people's usage of Sparkplug in specific industries, then that will be a great opportunity.
Yeah, in fact, our speaker at ARC is from the pharma business, so not oil and gas.
Yeah, I think, Jeff, that there are applications everywhere. You could look across any industry, and there could be definitely benefits that Sparkplug can bring. I mean, especially looking at just that data collection in particular. Benson was mentioning it there, but it's a lot of what we live and breathe in the brownfield world, right? It can be very difficult to have one central system connect to hundreds, if not thousands, of devices and trying to pull that data and keeping all that to be reliable. I mean, in oil and gas and water, wastewater, they've had to live that over the years, and MQTT is a breath of fresh air, right, to those industries. But in manufacturing, we're looking at more and more data these days. Scalability is becoming a real issue. We have to address it from the low levels, first. And this offers a really unique way of being able to deliver data efficiently, securely to these high level systems. But with things like store and forward, that's really important. We all have local HMIs. We've needed it there because if we lose connection, we've got to be able to go and control our machine. Well, at the same token, that thing's running out there. Let's store and forward data so we don't lose data during that time, right? And have that being brought up into these systems and not skipping a beat, not just to one SCADA host, but to many other applications out there. It's the benefit of it being interoperable. So just that decoupling nature at store and forward provides just more scalability, provides more efficiency, and the other big aspect of this, especially for manufacturing today, and we're seeing a lot of it, Arla and I are working with a lot of customers on this, which is the unified namespace. It's taking brownfield world and greenfield world, bringing in new sensors, devices, and we're putting it in a common space. We're able to, create data models off of this that I can plug in and see all the data across the organization. That's huge for what they could do on premise, but then of course even bigger for what we can do in the cloud. Bringing that data to services, digital twin services, when Azure or AWS offers a lot more functionality, or other products out there who have digital twin capabilities, they can just automatically get that data. So, I mean, if you really look at this as a core infrastructure change in how we deliver data, Sparkplug is so unique in that way, and just is versatile or applicable to everybody who is trying to solve these challenges. These are challenges that people have had for a long time.
I'll take it a step farther. If you have manufacturing, pharma, I don't care what your industry is, if you have multiple sites, then you should absolutely be looking into Sparkplug B, because if you have multiple sites, right, like a big manufacturing company, you're going to have SD-WAN or MPLS or some kind of incoming provider into your location, and then you need to get that manufacturing data to your central location or to another location. How are you going to do that in this environment where everything is moving to kind of a zero trust model, right? You're going to need to have that ability to be able to know, okay, I can publish out my data, it's encrypted, it's secure, and I can control what comes back in, right? I have control of default any. And you begin to actually be able to move your data where you need to get it to efficiently and securely. And I'm telling you, I've been consulting with manufacturing company that it is difficult to do that with all the protocols and really the techniques that have been used to date.
And not a small manufacturing company, a Fortune 100, right? On the flow side, on the software vendor side, we're making a lot of direct connections to relational databases. We're making a lot of direct connections to historians. We're calculating KPIs. We're creating new points. We're feeding that back out Sparkplug so that it becomes that public, easy to consume point. So yes, are we going to be able to get away from all of these direct transactional connections? Probably not. Like not anytime soon. But once we get a new piece of information, it comes back to the UNS side, right? We want to get that out of our platforms back into a public, open, consumable, and secure way to do that. Good talking points, guys.
One other quick thing to mention is that it's Sparkplug is not just in terms of getting, streaming live data and the sort and forward of that, but there are systems out there that have atomic structures, right? These events that happen that occur at the edge that you want to be able to bring up in its entirety. It's a set of data together, and Sparkplug provides an avenue for that, and to do that extremely efficiently. Than having to, other mechanisms that we've done over the years. So I just want to mention that there's different kinds of data that we can bring in, and people are typically just focused on just like PLC data, right? But there's more to it than that.
Absolutely.
Well, and it's the plug and play. I mean, I still remember as we were working through this, as we were working with inductive automation initially, the IoT manager for TE connectivity. He said, Arlen, my vision is that with proper security, I can walk into a plant, plug my laptop into the infrastructure, and in less than a minute, I can learn the entire factory. I can get that single source of truth. And that literally is what we've been able to demonstrate with Sparkplug, is that now machines for all of the OEMs like Opto22, they can tell me everything that I need to know as a single source of truth without me having to go, oh, gee, I got to have a register map. Well, now I'm going to have to go manually enter the register map into my database and put that into the poll table. And, everybody always starts a project off with saying, okay, we can change the poll table, but guess what? They never do. It becomes hard coded, and then Todd goes, well, we've got 17 layers of management to go change the poll table because somebody will be upset because they didn't get their data point in that amount of time. And I think that really is the kind of disruptive technology here, is we've taken something called pub sub and we took it from IT. And that's the other interesting thing, is that it's ironic that when we have these OT-IT conversations and you say pub sub, and you say MQTT, IT go, oh yeah, I know about that, right? So we've almost got this common denominator now, in that MQTT was born of operations. It started being used by IT, and now we can put those two things together.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar about application, even in plant floors, is wherever you put this, you're going to optimize your network traffic. Right? You're going to get the process variables that you set for 1 second right now. You're going to get that or faster because they change more often. And then the things that you don't care about, they're only going to send when they change. You don't have to do a separate poll for those as well. So it doesn't matter if you're on the plant floor or you're upstream, you're still going to optimize your network traffic.
Mm-hmm. So the TCK, right? The Technology Compatibility Kit, that is designed for a vendor to test their implementation of Sparkplug. We have a question from someone that talked about, hey, they downloaded that and tried to run that against a PLC, and it was very complicated. And they asked if there was a simpler way to do that. Can you just talk about what you see and what the purpose of that TCK really is? I know we've hit on the point of, hey, we have a kind of a gateway that says you can't become Sparkplug be compatible and get the logo unless you pass a TCK. So it's obviously some kind of a test mechanism. But can you just talk about it? Tell me like I'm a 5-year-old. It's not uncommon how people usually talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So to understand the TCK, you have to understand the way the specification document is built. in the
Okay,
sense
you
that
have already started talking to me like I'm a college professor.
yeah, absolutely.
Right.
So there's a document that says what Sparkplug does. Okay, there are rules in that document that you have to follow. Each rule has a number. Okay, there are 125 of those rules that Sparkplug, you need to follow in order to do Sparkplug. Okay, so the TCK validates each and every rule to ensure that you follow them. So the way the TCK works is that you have a screen, okay, that guides you through the process of performing tests for each of the rules, and that's about it. So
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 is it made so that as an end user I can just download it and run it against a piece of equipment?
yes, but it's a bit more involved than that in the sense you need a complete architecture or deployment in order to validate things. So if I'm testing Benson's device, for example, then maybe I need some software alongside it, like Ignition and an MQTT broker and things like that to have a complete setup, right? But ultimately, once you have a complete setup, and to have an idea of what those setups can be, you can have a look at the listing requests in the repo. But really, once you have that setup, you download the TCK, run it, and then there are some manual steps involved in some of the tests because you're testing specific behaviors at runtime and things like that. So that's why it cannot be completely automated. But the UI and instructions provided guide you at a high level through the process. And our friends at HiveMQ even, I think I saw a post coming out of them that is really, really, really detailed about everything that you need to do in order to run the TCK as well. So that's a useful resource.
and
Where
also,
can somebody find that resource?
I don't
Yeah,
have the
it's
link
on-
right now, but
yeah,
I will.
if you
fetch it.
download that, Alan, there's a comment. So I understand exactly. We tried to make that as clear and as simple as possible, but Wes has put up a comment section in the GitHub when you do the pull for the request for feedback that says, "Hey, we don't understand this. How can we make this better?" So we have that built in to where if this particular person is trying to run the TCK and there's something not working, then have him get on the Slack channel, have him comment on that so we can feed that back into the loop within the Eclipse Software Foundation.
All right, I'm going to shift real quick to some outstanding questions. Cody wants to know, hey, any current plans to add quality to the metrics within Sparkplug B?
Quality is already there.
Okay. Cody, it's already done. See, you asked at the beginning of the hour, we got it taken care of.
Well,
Yeah,
I'll mention it's there in two ways, right? You've got metrics themselves that would have metadata that includes quality of that metric, and then you have the overall, the awareness of the session with MQTT, that we know that particular edge device is offline, so an application could overlay like this is disconnected or that a quality that it doesn't know what those values are yet, right? But when it comes through, then it would know if individual values were good or not by those metrics. So there's both sets of that Sparkplug provides you.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll give you an example of quality communications. My son, who lives in our property on a guest house, he came over last night and he told me he had a leak in the sink, and I told him, "I'm fine with that. I'm not going to judge you." So it's really important that we understand when we're talking about quality and communications, we get it right.
Exactly.
Cody, if that doesn't answer your specific question, or if anybody else here, please take Frederick's advice. I believe, Frederick, you had mentioned go over to the Git, use the comments section there, ask your questions, get involved at the GitHub for Sparkplug. The link is on both this chat as well as in our LinkedIn event.
As well as the Slack channel.
As well as the Slack channel is where
most of the team members lurk there during the day, and typically they are very responsive. If not, I'm there to nudge them.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. I think we need to wrap questions. I've got one more that I promised I'd get to. Michael wants to know, for the redundant control system, mission critical application, should birth certificates be sent from both, or we have to prevent that? The same about publishing. I might.
So the concept is I have two redundant. Let's take it up to 22 PLCs, and I'm going to publish to a broker or redundant brokers. Do both devices need to send birth certificates?
I could tell you from at least the ignition side, we look at redundancy with mission critical is you have a 2-node system, but they act as a single unit. So if the master is online, it's going to be the one to publish that birth certificate of all of its data. If that goes offline, then the backup will then be doing the same thing. So it's either one or the other, not both. Now, there are implementations out there where you have high availability across multiple nodes, where you have a set of data or devices that different nodes could handle. And each of them are, they're communicating who's going to handle what. Well, in that particular case, they're going to be publishing the devices and the data that they're interested in, that they're working with currently. And that might change, right, as they're negotiating that. But in a typical redundant fashion, it's only going to be one.
Okay. All right. Hey, let's talk about what we're going to see next week. Next week, same time, Wednesday, is the Plug Fest. Look, this is the architecture that we're going to build out in real time. A bit ambitious over the course of an hour and a half to 2 hours. We're going to simulate some site work, some edge work, take Groove Epic, a PLC Next, some older legacy non-Sparkplug PLC. We're going to hook those up to a broker. That's Data Hub, Software Toolbox. Ignition Edge and Canary are going to consume from that broker. That broker is going to replicate into a DMZ using a second broker, this one, Chariot, Cirrus Links broker. On the enterprise side or the business network side, Canary, Flow, and Ignition are going to consume from that broker everything that's happening from site, including that non-Sparkplug legacy PLC info. Including anything that Ignition Edge might want to publish, some new information that arrives there, or even that Site Canary might want to publish. Maybe there's some calcs being run on Canary. All of that moves to the DMZ. Our enterprise applications are consuming that. Meanwhile, we've got a SignalFire Ranger way out on the edge, 3 or 4 points that it wants to share. That's going to get pushed up to a cloud broker, our third broker, HiveMQ. Now, everything that has happened on the enterprise, oh, by the way, the enterprise applications will consume that data from the Hive broker. Those enterprise applications are going to come up with new insights. Again, calcs, events, KPIs. They're going to turn around and publish back down to site that pertinent information, as well as publish up to the Hive MQ broker. That Hive MQ broker would then be available to cloud applications on demand as needed. And then here's where I think after we get done all of that, again, think hour and a half time frame. After we get done all of that, way back down on the site, see that virtual PLC piece? That's Arlen standing by to turn on 400, 300, 500, whatever the number is, new devices. Now, those devices, we're going to follow a unified naming structure here. Those devices are going to start publishing right through those same channels. And on the far right, you're going to see a Canary application and an Ignition application. When those devices come online in the next 30 seconds, pick up hundreds of new devices and just show up. So this is that beauty that we talked about, where you're just not having to go back into each application and add tags to your list and build new applications for those new tags. It's by far the most ambitious thing we've tried to do, Alan, in a virtual workshop. The other fun part of this is not just specific to these vendors. HiveMQ is offering a secondary cloud broker. So we're going to have, I guess, now 4 brokers in total, where we're going to be advertising or publishing the credentials to the public so that you'll be able to consume all of this information in your own applications, as well as publish information to that broker that we can mess around with during the Plug Fest as well. If you want to get involved for all of this, real simple, hop over to integratelive.com. You will need to register for this event. We're going to use this same StreamYard platform, but it's more of a webinar based than a live stream. It will be live, but it won't be here on LinkedIn Live or YouTube Live is, I guess, the way to say it. Integratelive.com is also where we're going to share the credentials for you to participate on that other Hive broker as well. What do you think to the team? Is this too ambitious for a live demo?
Oh, what could go wrong?
Yeah, exactly.
I see one very centralized piece of software there with CirrusLink's name on it. Arlen, that's the, if that goes wrong, we're in trouble, right?
Yep.
Yeah, you got it. I feel like we're in good hands with you.
We have the right team in place, that's for sure.
That's right. Well, we've missed some opportunities. I'm still trying to figure out if Alan tried to drop a dad joke on
That was my dad joke.
I'm just not getting it. If anybody else,
My son said he had a leak in his sink. I said, that's okay. I'm not going to judge you.
I'm just missing it. I'm usually pretty good at
Leak. Usually he would use the bathroom.
Oh, he had to leak in his. Okay, whew, got it. Man, sorry guys. Took a while. It took a while.
So painful.
Ugh. Hey,
so painful.
I want to thank each of you for being here today. Thanks for clarity around exactly how someone can get involved in Sparkplug. My assumption in coming into this was that when people have ideas where they want to see the specification go, it could be that there's no way for those ideas to come forward. I heard that there was today. It could be that when those ideas come forward, unless their organization is writing a check or unless they're part of some powerful organization, that those ideas aren't going to get heard or implemented. I heard today that that's just not the case. So that leaves me to believe that if there's good ideas and those ideas are being heard and there's value in implementing them, and we want to move into new use cases for Sparkplug, which I heard we do, that ultimately what it comes down to is that old rubber meets the road thing of not having enough people to help. So if you're hearing this message today and you have the capability, even if you only have a couple hours a month to give, will you please consider giving it? It's to a worthy cause. And a sincere thank you to the organizations that have both in their time and in their finances made contributions to Sparkplug, to the working group. And as always, Alan and I want to say thank you from the Integrate Live side to those same organizations. There's a lot of crossover there. To those same organizations that have made financial contributions to Integrate Live to not only help make this type of thing possible, but also those that are also helping make Sparkplug possible. So a sincere thank you to Canary and Opto22 and to Flow Software for having financial contributions to both those organizations. All right, should we wrap it?
Hey, my brother has one big hand and one small hand, so we nicknamed him Clock.
Okay.
Oh gosh.
Not terrible. Better than a leak in the sink. Good.
No, I don't think so.
Well, you know, the past, the present, and the future all walked into a bar, and man, I got to tell you, it was tense.
Oh, jeez.
Thanks, Travis.
I would ask the group, my wife and I have come to kind of a tough decision this week. We've decided not to have kids. Just kind of keep us in your thoughts and prayers. Actually, keep my kids in your thoughts and prayers. They're taking it really hard.
Hey, I told you that. Never mind. I'm not going to say it.
All right. Hey, let's wrap it up. Everybody, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your attention. And thank you always for just continue to support Integrate Live. We hope we're adding value, and we can't wait to show you what we can do in 2 hours time next week on the live Plug Fest for Sparkplug. Until then, we'll talk to you next week.
All right.